Welcome to Fireside Chat Fridays. I am your host, Haneen, and we will be starting today's conversation just shortly. As always, you're welcome to send in comments and questions in the chat below. We have a very exciting guest feature today, and I'm really looking forward to asking her some of the questions that have been on my mind, and we will do our best to include your questions. You send them in, and we will be starting our conversation in just a moment. Oh, welcome.
Hi.
Welcome, Carolyn. You made it. Great.
Yes.
Oh, perfect. So I'm just going to do a very quick introduction, and feel free to, add anything onto that, and then we'll dive right in. Is that okay?
Sure.
Perfect. So for folks tuning in, my name is Haneen, and I'm representing Voices for a World Free of Nuclear Weapons. I'll be your host for today's live with our guest, is Caroline MacKenzie, who has held several interfaith leadership positions. She is the team lead of the Voices for a World Free of Nuclear Weapons education team, and is all-rounded inspiring person to interact with and work with. So we're very excited to have her with us today. For those of you tuning in for the first time, Voices is an interfaith and intercultural group advocating for nuclear abolition from an intergenerational, ethical, and faith-based perspective. Our leaders span from youth leaders to seasoned diplomats and politicians, and we invite you today to share these moments with us during Fireside Chat Fridays as we talk about this issue and our role with different leaders and thinkers who are shaping and changing the nuclear abolition landscape. So as always, please drop your questions and share comments in the chat as we go behind the scenes on Carolyn's story and what she thinks is most important now. This video will be available for viewing after the broadcast as well. And thank you for tuning in today. So we'll now turn to our guest, Carolyn. Carolyn, why, maybe we can just start with a little bit about your background and interest on the nuclear weapons issue, like how you got to be involved. How did you first learn about Voices, and what was your greatest motivation to join in? And how has it changed your perception of this issue over time?
All right.
Yeah.
Lots of questions. Let's see if I'll start with the first. Let's see. I think I've been interested in getting rid of nuclear weapons since my youth. I think the first petition that I remember is taking around and trying to get people to sign was the support for the Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT, when I was about 20 or so. And so it's been an interest of mine for a long time, but I've worked the last 45 years in the nuclear industry, but on the side of protection, I'm a health physicist, and my interest is in protecting people against radiation exposure. And I have focused on, throughout this, doing this for our own government, for the National Nuclear Security Administration, for the University of California, and then overseas for the UN, for the International Atomic Energy Agency, in an effort to prevent nuclear weapons or any kind of nuclear material being diverted and used inappropriately. So that has been my career. I'm also an interfaith leader, and so I've been president of the Interfaith Council for the last several years, and of Contra Costa County, where I live in the Bay Area in California. And so I went to Stanford, heard about Voices, and was invited.
Oh, we lost audio for a second. Oh, there you are.
heard all about. Yeah, sorry,
No, no.
lost you for a moment, huh? Um, I I was invited to go to Stanford to the URI as part of the Interfaith Council, and it was a total surprise to me to hear that URI had a cooperation circle focused on freeing the world of nuclear weapons. And I was excited. I went, oh, this blends my career and my interfaith background together. How wonderful. So that was exciting. And I started participating with the cooperation circle, and then we started focusing on education and educating youth in particular. So it's a nice convergence of many of my interests is sort of how it came together initially.
That's, incredible. And it's feels like it was meant to be.
It does. That's exactly right. I
Yeah.
agree. It does feel that way to me too.
Yeah. Yeah. And, we're lucky to have you. And, it's just so exciting to hear about this. I don't know, Caroline, can you tell us a little, are there any stories from your time working in protecting people from a health perspective against radiation? Is there, over this just prolific career that you've built over time, like how, are there any stories that you would share with our viewers?
Well, it certainly started with just, working with researchers who use radiation in research and trying to help them do it safely. But then, Chernobyl happened. And I got involved in helping our American tourists that came back from Chernobyl that were contaminated, and cleaning them up and assessing their radiation exposure. And so that was the early days. But then I went on to work at one of our national laboratories, Lawrence Livermore National Lab, and there I started to focus more on nuclear security, and making sure that these materials don't get diverted or misused. And that ended up sending me to Europe to the work for the UN. And I led an effort for 3 years for the UN in locating lost radioactive sources around the world, that are large sources that could be possibly diverted to be, if wrapped with explosives, could become a dirty bomb. And so that became my area of expertise. And I traveled in more than 60 countries around the world, trying to secure large radioactive sources so they couldn't be diverted to be dirty bombs. Yeah. And then I came back and did that for the US. The US asked me to focus that for them as well. And I worked in Africa extensively, working on securing these materials. And then I've done it for the state of California now, in a similar effort. So it's one of these things that you're right. It sort of has tracked my career my whole life, and it's evolved in interesting ways in helping people to protect themselves against these materials and try to stop it from being used in a manner that could hurt people.
Yeah. No, I just, I feel like I want to say thank you for doing this amazing work for everyone,
Thank you.
Yeah. No. And, it's, I think it's difficult, difficult work to do, I guess, and
It
maybe
is.
very, yeah.
No,
And
this is not easy work. You do not
yeah.
travel. You travel in the developing countries, and I've done this work in all over Russia and all the former Soviet countries, all through China, through Africa, through many, many developing and war-torn countries. So it's not pleasure travel.
Yeah.
It's tough travel.
Yeah.
And you're right, no, it's not easy, but it's something that I had a lot of confidence that I could do and do well. And
Yeah.
so I enjoyed the work in that sense. I enjoyed meeting people from other cultures and helping them where the help is the right thing to be doing.
Right,
You know?
right. And your expertise, of course, in this particular task is in
Yeah.
itself, I guess, a service
Yeah. Yeah.
to everyone. So wow, amazing, and
Yeah.
I guess I'm curious to link that back to your work on education with voices, and
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
you think that's important, and working with young people, like what's the connect over there?
Yeah. Well, I've worked extensively with a variety of groups of people teaching about radiation, and certainly at the University of California at Berkeley, we always focused on education and teaching people how to use these materials safely. Um, so I've been involved with education all along, but you quickly figure out that you got to educate people in the basic information if they're going to make intelligent decisions about it. I've worked to educate journalists about this. We brought in journalists from all over the world, along with Peter Rickwood, and educated journalists on the dangers of these materials and how they can be used safely or not. And so we've done it from children to adults to journalists to scientists to government officials to even training inspectors in how to do this work. And so it's been you're right, a fascinating career, um, and it's had a good mission. And so
Yeah,
I see that even though I retired this last year and I'm
yeah,
happy to not be traveling as much, I, when I found voices, I felt like, oh, this is nice. I can do this. This is something I know well, and I can help educate the next generation of people to keep doing this work because we need to keep doing it.
yeah, yeah. It's like really, like, again, passing that baton of leadership, in the
Yeah.
way that you've had this incredible leadership in keeping people safe, and educating them about the dangers of radiation, and in the same way, it's like passing forward that responsibility, I guess, almost.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. It is a
And
responsibility.
yeah, I'm blown away. This is so cool, and so exciting to be able to hear directly from you
Mm.
about how this experience has been. And I just, I wonder what your recommendations might be after working with young people, after training folks on this issue, about what are ways that we can get this message out to them in the most powerful and effective way, and how do we bring them together to face this issue, because like you
Hmm.
said, you've worked with many different kinds of groups. What's that common denominator,
Yeah.
that we can
Well,
focus on?
I think Bishop Swing says it well when he says that the idea that any one person has the power to push a button and kill 1 million people is insanity. And that this old paradigm that these weapons made us safer, in reality, it's just not true. I've been working in the industry. I know accidents happen, mistakes happen, and so we are not safer for having these. And we all defended it during World War II as a deterrent. But in hindsight, I think we all think that's a mistake. Many people, not everyone. But I certainly believe it was a true mistake. And I think that we have to rise to the occasion and step back from the brink of this disaster and control it again. And so my hope is that we educate youth, um, and help them to realize that there's another way to do this, that we don't have to continue this pathway of insanity, of spending unbelievable sums of money on this craziness to create more and more nuclear weapons to blow us up more and more and more. What's the point of this? And that we can step back and stop this. And so my hope is with the youth, and with people realizing our mistakes of the past and realizing that no one should have that kind of power. and that we need to abolish them all. We need
Mm,
to ban them all, and it's an obligation that we all carry now.
yeah.
Um, so it's a big mission, and it's not going to happen quickly, but it's something that I think we've seen the political climate change significantly, right? And
Mm,
I think we can see big changes like this, that people are going to realize the inhumanity of these weapons and how crazy it is that we own them,
mm,
and move the next step. So we have decreased them significantly. There was a day when there were over 70,000 of these weapons, and now we're down to less than 14,000.
mm,
But one is too much. And
mhm.
so we have to go the next steps.
Yeah, I mean, after a certain point, it's like, how much do we blow up? It's
Yeah,
yeah.
it's crazy.
No,
Doesn't make
that's
much sense. But countries seem to feel that they are safer because they have this.
because they
And
have this,
I think I would claim that they are less safe because they have them.
yeah. Hmm. And of course,
Um,
there's, your experience and your immersion in this industry, that's kind of like speaking through that's kind of backing up your view in terms of what really makes us safer. And um, it's really interesting, Carolyn, because as you talk about this, especially your point about a handful of people having the authority and the power to take steps for all of us, that we may not even be party to that decision, we may not
mhm.
have endorsed that decision, and we may not really, as the system currently stands, we don't really have an opportunity to say no before such a decision is taken. So it really it reminds me of some conversations about the values of democracy and how this needs to be how decentralized decision making and involving everyone no matter where they are and empowering them to have an opinion, which is why I think your work in the education team and educating them is such a powerful tool.
It's the
And
first step, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you have any moments of like, when you were working on trainings with journalists or with, different groups of people or with students where you sort of, where you where there was these like light bulb moments where people who were being trained kind of, um, are there any stories around that or any moments where they learned things that they had no idea about or had no framework for. Is there anything that stands out over?
Well, I think yes. I think radiation is one of those things that until you've worked around it and you don't see it, you don't
Yeah.
feel it, you don't smell it. All
Hmm.
your normal senses fail you with
Hmm.
radiation, and consequently, people just have a fear, right?
Hmm.
And part of that fear is that it's so educating people on what it is and why they should form their opinions about it,
Hmm.
then they have to form their own opinions, right? And I think you have to step back at that point. But educating them on what it is and how it can have good uses and it can have bad uses. And that's, to me, is that light bulb moment when you see people realize, okay, this is how you detect this. And yes, it's present, and it can do harm to you in big doses. And, so I enjoy educating them so that they can make sound decisions, and not turn down an x-ray for a broken bone because they're afraid of radiation. Well, that's a good use, and it's a small use, and it should be happen.
Hmm.
But to use it as a nuclear weapon against a million people is an awful
To
consequence.
weaponize that. Hmm. Hmm.
Yes, exactly. So it's that balance that I try to teach is to have them technically understand the topic and then make intelligent decisions about the materials. And I've done that all over the world. Starting with even little kids, with my own children, going into their classroom with the Geiger counter and showing them how to detect sources and how to use it,
Cool.
and to working with the Russian military and retrieving large sources with the Russian military.
Wow.
And teaching them how to detect it. Yeah.
Wow. Was there anything that you saw in, because you've talked to people from all over the world, and was there anything in their reactions or responses to your work with them that you saw was sort of pretty much the same across the board? Like, was there anything that was that kept, that was any response that was kind of like coming up over and over again, and it was just interesting for for you to observe that? Yeah.
One is there aren't many women that work in this field.
Right.
And so there were a lot of skeptical men that I had to earn my credibility for them to take me seriously.
Right.
So, there was that challenge. There aren't many women in the field, and they, didn't necessarily want to listen to me until then they realized that I knew what I was talking about. So there's that challenge, that clearly came through in a lot of the international work. But you hang in there and you stay with the challenge, and you don't react a whole lot to it. And when they see that what you're trying to do is actually help them, they usually come around.
Yeah, and you're opening new doors, I guess, for
Yeah.
other women. Yeah. No, that's incredible. And no, thank you for sharing, Carolyn. That's very eye-opening for me, and I'm sure for many people who are listening right now. It's a whole other side of the story, that we don't often get to get a window into. So we really value this this sharing. And so I guess building on what we've been talking about, I feel like a lot of your work and a lot of what Voices is doing is really about building hope and building something for for the children, for the future,
Exactly.
and in the education team especially, I feel like you're more directly addressing some of those needs, and and targeting some of those groups. And so what is your hope for these children, and what is the world that we must try to build for them?
Well, I want them to make their own opinions, and so I want to give them the facts, and I want them to not underestimate kids, that they can't understand this. And so I think that when we, as the education team, when we surveyed this, we found that there isn't much out there for young children. There's lots of college courses on this, and there's great books and some of that, but they're not things that are really geared for young adults or for children. And so we thought, we really got to start younger and educate people from an early age about this, so that they, from the get-go, will be able to make sound decisions about this. So that is our goal here, is to start younger, and that it's not impossible to teach young children about this. You can. My own children learn from an early age, and others can too, and so so that's our fun part of what we're creating. Everything from animations to Captain No Nukes to young adult and public versions of this information that is easy to understand, and anybody can readily make their own opinions about, wait, does this make sense? Because I think when you really look at the facts, the cards are stacked against it making much sense. I don't think too many people think that one person should be able to push a button and kill 1 million people. you know, and they just haven't related to it at that level.
Right, right. They haven't
You know?
personalized it, you know, in that way.
Yeah,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah. And the horror of what these weapons can actually do. And of course, when you teach young children, you're not dwelling on that. But you are giving them a feel for, you know, that we got to solve our problems by diplomacy and by talking and not by violence. And that's something that I think any child can understand because they're told they're not supposed to hit their friends, right? And they're not supposed to get physical, and they know this from school. So this is not foreign information for them.
Mm-hmm. No, that's incredible. What's your vision, Carolyn, for what, you know, for what voices can do in this space and for what, you know, the education team is providing? What's your ideal outcome?
My ideal outcome is that we create fun videos that for kids and for young adults that are easy to understand and that are easily accessed on the internet, and that anybody and everybody can use them and view them, and that teachers would like to use them and use them, but anybody could get up there and feel comfortable that the information is accurate, it's not biased, and that it's that they can learn from it. And so that's my hope,
Mm.
you know. And of course, because we are interfaith related, we also bring in the interfaith dimension, and you know, talk about how the golden rule applies across all faith traditions, and and it applies here, you know, that we all have our own beliefs, that it makes no sense that we can justify killing like this. So I think it's um, it's a good mission. It's a good mission. It's a good vision, and we're having some fun doing it. Is the best part, you know, creating these animations and creating presentations and videos that hopefully everybody will enjoy.
Yeah, and we're doing it together.
Yeah.
We're
Yes.
all doing it together. That's just incredible. No, thank
Yeah.
you. And so, as we come to our last question, Carolyn, I just, you know, I want to thank you again for sharing. And you know, I wonder if there is one prayer or wish or hope or dream that you might want to share with us as we conclude, or, you know, a thought that you want to leave us with.
Well, you know, as I've always thought, you know, Albert Einstein had it down when he said that you cannot solve problems by force, but only by understanding. And that really has always stuck with me, that, um, you know, we have to be that change and hang in there with people that disagree with us, and try to understand each other and not solve our problems with violence. So that is my prayer, is that we learn to nonviolently communicate better and solve our problems peacefully.
Peacefully and together.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
No, thank you, Carolyn. This has been a pleasure, and you know, I have a lot of food for thought now, and I'm sure folks who are listening are feeling the same way. And you know, we'll drop your details in the description in case, you know, in case people wanna learn more. And you know, I just invite our listeners to keep an eye on our social media and our Voices website for more educational materials over coming weeks and
Mm-hmm.
months.
Yes.
So
We're actively working on it.
we're very excited for when they're ready to be rolled out. So thank
Okay.
you, Carolyn, and
Thank
we'll
you.
see you soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Okay.